Hello, hello. JD Grossmitz here, lead singer and streaming talent of Malignant Bear, coming at you with something a little bit different tonight, and that is a quick little video review. This is for New World. This is Amazon's attempt at an MMO, and I just wanted to keep this brief. I'm going to showcase a little bit of gameplay, and then I actually wrote up some thoughts about this, and we'll get into that and sort of what I think and feel about this game. Given the experiences I've had with it, more than just this past beta. So let's jump on in and check out the game itself. So here we have, we're in just the starter area just because I didn't want to risk spoiling anything. So this is a fresh character, fresh onto the island here with some very basic things. So I have some just gear that I've found, a smattering of weapons that I've discovered of different types. Again, just very basic things, level 5. Nothing crazy, so just to kind of showcase this. So, we're going to fight some things. I want to showcase the combat because the combat is sort of one of the issues with this game. I'm going to come right out and say it that I'm not super crazy about this game, and the combat is one of the reasons why I'm not. So let's see it. Here we have a Ice Gauntlet. This is a magic weapon. Let's see. We have our light attacks, heavy attacks, costing mana. This thing's running at me. Kill it before it gets here. No big deal. I leveled up my Ice Gauntlet, so I get mastery points. Let's check out what that means. So here you can see these are all the different weapon types in the game. Every weapon has a full mastery tree, so we'll check out the Ice Gauntlet here. And these are different abilities. So you have your actual skills and then passives. And you get points as you use the weapons. Every weapon, you can only have 3 abilities equipped at a time. There's not that many abilities, so it's not a big deal. But it just means that you're going to be using the same skills a lot. You can equip 2 weapons at any given time, which is kind of nice, so it gives you some variety. But again, it's just not a lot in general, so that's 6 skills at any given time. So we'll check out what we have here. Ice spikes, create a trail of spikes, that seems kind of cool. Or place an ice pylon that fires projectiles, that sounds kind of neat. Okay, so you see we have our ability there. And let's put down our little pylon, see how it does with this guy. Right, so now it's a tower defense game. Our little pylon. While it's doing that, we'll switch to our other weapon. It's a rapier. It's a sword, pretty fast. You can see it's more action combat. I can't tab target onto things. I just have to kind of swing at them. So you can't target onto things. Hitboxes are questionable at times. It's action-oriented, so you can block, you can dodge. There's some potential to it for sure. The hitboxes you can see. So, for example, I want to loot this thing. How do I? Be basically on top of it. Okay. Just get some shells for my gun. So let's check out that then. That could be interesting. Let's try some of these other weapons. So here we have a musket and a big 2-handed hammer. So let's see what we can do here. With the musket and any ranged weapons, you can zoom in. Obviously, musket takes a while to reload there. Wonderful texture pop in. Once things get in melee range, you pretty much have to switch weapons. Being a full ranged character in this would be awful. So, we have some skills for this class, or this weapon rather. It's the 2-handed thing. It's pretty slow. You'll note that there's no stagger on any of these attacks. So this attack is slow, doesn't stagger things, I get locked in the animations, which means that, in my opinion, 2-handed weapons are pretty terrible in this, compared to, say, sword and board. So, try another. So here we have our sword with shield, better at blocking, attack a little bit faster. I have multiple skills for this already. Let's see, wait for things to respawn. I don't want to get too far into there. While we do that, let's look at some of the crafting. So you can harvest. It's like a survival game. Picking up all sorts of stuff. If I had a axe, I could get some wood there. Gonna pick up flint. Very Rust or Conan Exiles-like, for sure. Need some food. Get a food buff going. Wonderful moldy looking hunk of bread there. Get this guy before his textures are fully loaded in. See, our skill that's supposed to knock people back and stagger them, it really doesn't. So that's... You can see what I'm getting at here. That's kind of the weakest point, the combat. It has potential. I like the idea of the action combat, and I'll talk about that more with my actual written thoughts. But again, not as good as it could have been. The closest comparable for sure is ESO. So I was there doing a quest, and again, this is early on, so I'm not concerned about spoilers. And who knows, maybe this will change. This is the beta. This game does launch in a month, though, so that's worth pointing out. If you think a lot is going to change in game development in a month, I have some very bad news for you. But we'll see here. Talk to this guy.
This is...
Wow, I took down that corrupted thing. I'm the best. Complete the quest. It's good to hear. Take the message, accept the quest, whatever. Wants me to go to town. Before we do that, let's check out the actual crafting menu. The UI in this game is really nice. I think that's probably the best feature of it. This menu is pretty easy to use. You can see there's all sorts of stuff that I can make. All sorts of crafting things. Crafting stuff is pretty fast. So we'll make an axe. Pops up, it has gear score. I can use it set as my active tool, salvage things immediately, exit it. Doesn't matter. Let's take a look at some of the other things here in the menu. So here we have, again, this is our stats. I've leveled up points and different attributes. You get all sorts of different rewards as you go. Again, there's my weapon skills. Here's all of the crafting skills. So again, there's a lot here potentially, especially if you're into crafting. It's your journal, nothing crazy there. There's the full world map. You can see different factions have taken over these different regions. These are player-led. What players do is the big feature of this game, and I think that's the one that people are going to be drawn towards. This is more of a large-scale Rust than it is a traditional MMO. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is a store. I don't know what these things are going to cost. I don't know what they're going to put in here. I'm sure there's going to be controversy about it, but it's worth pointing out. Your company, so this is your guild, basically. So, now, I actually wrote down some thoughts about this, and I'm going to read them out as we auto-run to the next town, so if you'll pardon that for a second. So, if I can get back into the game here. There we go. So, I felt strongly enough about New World to actually compose and write down my thoughts, which is kind of crazy for me. I like doing things off the cuff usually. Now that the NDA for this is over, I can finally talk about this. So I pre-ordered New World when it was first announced as a free-to-play title back in 2016. And that pre-order meant I paid nothing because it was free-to-play. Amazon, to their credit, has honored that original $0 pre-order. They have invited me to every single alpha and beta test since then, and are going to give me a full free copy of the game, again, just honoring that initial agreement. So, with that in mind, all of these thoughts on the game are just my opinions, because that's what reviews are. So, from what I can remember of earlier tests, and as I've said before, New World is more like Rust than an MMO. It has a little bit better combat than that, a little bit simpler crafting, I think, and it's pretty much always had some questionable optimization. Early iterations were interesting, if a little dry, having the more action-oriented combat, but in an engine that doesn't allow for kind of more nuance. There's not really weight to attacks, has always felt a little bit off. There's not a whole lot of PvE content, or at least there wasn't early on, and there still isn't too much from what I understand. But early on, people complained about the game. They wanted more of a standard MMO, and Amazon, to their absolute credit again, nothing but respect for the devs on this. They listened and they started adding more PvE content. Of course, this angered some of the PvP crowd, but, you know, what doesn't? And I know I'm going to get flack for saying it, but you are never going to please that audience. All of those people are either incredibly picky, or fickle, or both. You have people that want what they remember or heard about from old games like Dark Age of Camelot, or people who are just going to jump ship to whatever the next early access survival cash grab is, or just go back to Rust. I really don't think that's an audience you want to try to build a game around, but oddly enough, Amazon is probably the only company that could have made it work, or at the very least shut them up forever because they have all of the money to do that. So, anyway, they've been adding more and more PvE content over the years, but also trying to placate that PvP crowd still. There's some of both types of content now, but frankly not enough of either, especially given the development time and comparable titles. Obviously, a new game is not supposed to launch with an established game's potentially years worth of content, but it does need to have more than New World does. On the PvP side, obviously a lot of that's going to be make your own fun, but the issue again is that the engine and the combat just really don't allow for it as much as I wish they could. As I said, combat-wise, the closest comparable to this is probably ESO. So you have blocking, dodging, basic and heavy attacks, and then a couple skills. New World, of course, has the 3 skills per weapon and 2 weapons at a time. ESO, though, is of course double that. This would be fine, again, if the combat felt good, but I really don't think it does. Everything's floaty, there's a lack of impact and momentum with everything, even more so than ESO. Animations for both you and any enemies are kind of awkward and underwhelming, and I suspect that between those animations and the optimization, the game engine just has some serious core problems. If a game has good gameplay, you can ignore or at least diminish some other faults, but New World just doesn't, in my eyes. The setting and world are interesting, if a little underutilized. In earlier iterations, when it was more PvP focused, the world was very barren and hostile. There was little background lore of various groups discovering and being killed or corrupted by the island. They've added more over the years, more flavor, different types of ruins or enemies, still not very much, and some notes from past expeditions, all that good stuff. But when they added more friendly NPCs, towns, and cities, like the one that I'm in right now, it kind of takes a lot out of that. There's tons of people in towns like this everywhere now that have somehow survived in this hostile world, and they obviously have these thriving cities. The more of these things they've added, the more it's taken away from that bleak atmosphere that I think the setting is supposed to have. There's ways to do this, but I'm not sure if it's really possible within the confines of an MMO where a certain level of NPC interaction is required and expected by players, especially when you start to add more of these PvE elements. The UI, as I mentioned, is fairly streamlined, I think owing to its origins as the PvP game, where you don't want to be bogged down by menus. Like I said, I think it's probably the best feature, and if other devs take anything away from this, I hope it's that. The crafting's interesting. Again, it's sort of a mix between more simplistic MMO systems and more complex survival games. I think it's done fairly well, but I can see fans of either style potentially being disappointed by it. You can't completely ignore it like you can in a lot of MMOs, but it's not as in-depth as the early access survival crowd is probably used to and would like. And all of that said, I know it sounds like I'm just trash in this game. New World is not a complete dumpster fire. There's good elements and ideas here, and I, like I said, well and truly believe the devs have tried their best, and I absolutely respect them for their efforts and their work. They've tried to appease both sides of the community the entire way, and are very clearly battling with some engine issues. After 5+ years of development, though, I think they got to the shit or get off the pot territory. If it hadn't been for Amazon's other game attempts very publicly failing, I think there was more than a little chance that New World would have just joined them. But Amazon wants and needs to put out a big title, even if it's only to prove that they can. It probably helps in the timing of this release window that WoW is having some very serious difficulties right now, to say nothing of the recent lawsuit. But I don't think they were counting on Final Fantasy XIV having the massive surge in popularity that it's enjoying right now, especially given that it's right before an expansion launch. It's kind of odd. And yes, I realize these are all very different games, but they're still MMOs, and they can and will cannibalize each other's audiences, as they always do. I think New World's going to have an audience and a following, at least for a little bit. People are always desperate for MMOs and big open-world survival crafting games like this, and I think they're going to be very curious about this. I think there's also still, like I said, somehow a lot of people who are still just in the, well, it's just a beta crowd, and are going to defend the myriad of issues that this game still has. How those people never learn, especially given relatively recent game failures, and how crazy it would be for a game like this to change massively in a month, I don't understand, but I digress. The biggest question is, how long will they stick around, and how long will Amazon support the game? Amazon is a very interesting case in that they have tons of money, but even with that, at a certain point you have to cut your losses, if for nothing else than because dev contracts just end. I think New World is probably make or break for Amazon's game development attempts, though. at least for bigger budget titles. If, or more likely in my opinion, when this game does fail, I think they're just going to pivot to mobile titles. There is a ton of hype surrounding this game, so I'm sure opinions either for or against are going to draw ire from people. I fully expect that with this. If you are interested in this game, I highly recommend you either try to get a beta key or wait for some post-launch reviews. While it's not a full-price game and there's no monthly subscription, $40 is still potentially a lot of money for some people, and Steam's review policy is only 2 hours, which is literally nothing when it comes to a big multiplayer game like this. But more importantly, I think for something like this, it might take you a while to either lose those hype blinders or for the game itself to potentially die a slow death, and your time is absolutely worth something. I hope that people who get their time and money worth out of this if they want to, if that's what they're looking for. But as someone who's played a lot of MMOs over the years, I will say there comes a point when you have to accept that chasing that fleeting feeling of the first time, whether it's exploration, big PvP battles, or just a satisfying raid kill, is sometimes maybe better left as a memory, or at the very least, attempts chasing it are better saved for a better game. So, again, that is my thoughts on New World. I'll probably check it out a little bit when it actually launches. Again, I have no reason not to. They're giving me a free copy of it. And I think there is some fun here, some content to be had, but it's hard to ignore some of the issues with this, and there are so many questions surrounding this game, just given the development cycle of it and Amazon's past failures. So, alright, well, all of that said, like I said, this was New World. I hope you enjoyed this quick little showcase of the game and my thoughts on it, my little review. Again, it is just in beta, and there is a chance that some of these things will change within the next month, but I wouldn't expect anything drastic. So, anyway, as always, we hope you enjoyed watching this, and until next time, have a good one.